What if the reason your life keeps stalling is not lack of talent, luck, clarity, or time, but the fact that your mood still gets a vote? Most people do not lose their future in one dramatic collapse. They lose it quietly, each time they ask discomfort whether today's promise is still convenient. You say you want success, freedom, respect, and a stronger life, yet every hard morning becomes a courtroom where your weakest feeling argues against your highest aim. And the frightening part is this: the voice that keeps delaying you rarely sounds lazy, reckless, or broken. It usually sounds reasonable, gentle, and self-protective. It says, you need the right energy, the right mindset, the right emotional weather, while your future stands outside the door getting colder. You have probably felt this before. You plan well at night. I'll feel intense conviction for an hour, then wake up and suddenly treat your own vision like a negotiable idea. You save videos, take notes, make schedules, buy journals, clean your desk, and call it progress, while the real work keeps waiting for a version of you that never arrives. You are not confused about what matters. You are trapped in a habit of needing your feelings to approve what your principles already decided. That is why so many intelligent people look ambitious in public, informed in conversation, and completely powerless in private when nobody is watching. They do not fail because they know too little. They fail because they keep obeying the emotional weather inside them like it deserves political power. Every time you say, I am just not in the right headspace, you may be describing a feeling, but you may also be obeying a disguise. Because fear almost never introduces itself honestly. It does not say, I am protecting your comfort. It says, wait until you feel clearer. And that small sentence has buried more books, businesses, bodies, careers, apologies, recoveries, and brave decisions than most people will ever admit. You think you are listening to yourself, but often you are listening only to the part of you that wants relief without consequence. That is not self-awareness. That is self-betrayal, wearing the perfume of emotional honesty so it can enter your life without being questioned. A weekday becomes dangerous when you treat it like a ruler instead of a weather report, something to notice but never to kneel before. The tragedy is not that you feel fear, boredom, doubt, or resistance. The tragedy is that you keep granting those feelings veto power. So your life gets designed by the weakest committee inside you, the tired self, the scared self, the easily discouraged self, the comfort-loving self. Then you wonder why your confidence feels fake, why your goals feel heavy, and why you keep starting over with the same exhausted sincerity. Confidence does not disappear because you are incapable. It disappears because you keep watching yourself break private agreements and calling the damage temporary. Most people believe discipline means forcing yourself harshly, but real discipline is much simpler. It means your standards do not beg your feelings for permission. You do not need to become emotionless, robotic, or cold. You need to stop letting temporary emotion hold authority over permanent consequences. But this is where people lie to themselves most beautifully, because the lie sounds mature, sensitive, and intelligent. I move best when I feel aligned. But alignment in many lives is nothing more than comfort wearing spiritual language, so avoidance can survive another day without being called avoidance. You say you are waiting for clarity, yet the task is already clear. What you are really waiting for is emotional permission to stop feeling threatened. And that permission never comes permanently, because growth always feels like trespassing at first, even when it leads you toward your rightful life. The new life you claim to want requires a new relationship with discomfort, and that means some part of your current identity must feel offended. Because the version of you that loves excuses, softness, invisibility, and endless restarting cannot survive inside a life built on consistency alone. So procrastination is rarely just about the task. It is often grief in advance for the weaker self that success would finally replace. You delay not only because the work is hard, but because finishing it would remove one more excuse for staying small forever. A completed project exposes you. A stronger body exposes you. A disciplined routine exposes you, because visible change demands a more accountable identity. That is why some people stay trapped in preparation for years, polishing the doorway, studying the map, and never entering the room. Preparation feels safer than transformation, because preparation lets you imagine a better self without forcing the death of the current one yet. And the internet makes this sickness worse. Because it lets you feel productive, reflective, and ambitious while remaining untouched by actual risk. You can consume 10 hours of wisdom, quote 3 philosophers, and still wake up tomorrow defeated by a mood you never trained to obey you. Jung would say the problem is not simply laziness, it is division, a civil war between the self you praise and the shadow you protect. Your conscious mind says it wants success, respect, mastery, and progress, but the shadow still craves comfort, invisibility, indulgence, and strategic retreat. So you become split in half, speaking one language in public and serving another religion in private, the religion of emotional convenience. The shadow is not only your rage, envy, and ugliness, it is also the part of you that secretly prefers safety over becoming. That is why avoidance can feel so intimate, because it is not coming from a stranger. It is coming from a hidden loyalty. You are loyal to the version of yourself that knows how to survive disappointment by never fully stepping into the arena again. You protect that version with beautiful language, calling it intuition, softness, healing, pacing, or self-respect, when sometimes it is fear asking for elegant camouflage. Jung's warning was simple. What stays unconscious will direct your life, and you will experience that hidden direction as fate for years. In ordinary language, that means the part of you you refuse to confront will keep choosing your actions while you pretend you had no choice. Nietzsche saw the same weakness from another angle. Most people do not need more desire, they need more power over inner chaos. He believed the stronger person is not the one in who feels powerful, but the one who can impose form when feelings are unstable. That sounds severe, but it is actually mercy, because a life ruled by moods becomes a house with no locks and no king. Nietzsche would not ask whether you felt ready today. He would ask whether you were willing to become the kind of person who acts anyway. Because self-overcoming is not poetic decoration. It is the brutal practice of refusing to let your lower impulses write your biography daily. And that is what success often is in plain language. Not brilliance, not charisma, not constant motivation, but the end of emotional democracy. The moment every inner voice gets an equal vote, the frightened child, the bored mind, the wounded ego, your future immediately becomes unstable. Your strongest life begins when one thing becomes non-negotiable. Feelings may speak, but they no longer get to decide for you again. And that is not repression, because repression hides truth, while disciplined action simply refuses to worship every signal that passes through the body. A feeling can be real and still be unfit to lead, just as a scream can be honest and still be bad advice. Many people ruin years by confusing sincerity with wisdom, as if anything they deeply feel must automatically contain the correct instruction inside. But your inner world contains fear, fatigue, resentment, hunger for comfort, hunger for attention, old shame, and voices that were never trained well. So maturity is not doing whatever feels true in the moment. Maturity is learning which inner voice has earned the right to command. Well, when you keep acting only under good emotional conditions, you train yourself to function only when life is gentle and collapse when it is not. Then ordinary resistance starts feeling like an emergency, and every task begins to look cruel simply because your nervous system dislikes friction. This is how capable people slowly become fragile. They do not face less difficulty, they just lose the habit of walking through it. And the cost is enormous, because each private surrender teaches your identity something dangerous. Discomfort outranks your word inside your own life. Once that lesson repeats enough times, you no longer trust your plans, and eventually you stop believing your promises even when you mean them. That is the hidden origin of low confidence in many ambitious people, not incompetence, but accumulated evidence that they abandon themselves under pressure. You cannot keep disappointing yourself in secret and still expect a solid sense of self to survive in public for long afterward. Every avoided call, every delayed task, every broken routine, every promise moved to tomorrow becomes a vote for the identity that cannot be trusted. And over time, that identity starts dressing itself in philosophy, saying, maybe this goal is not authentic. Maybe I am meant for something else. Sometimes you are not being redirected by wisdom at all. Sometimes you are simply retreating from the pain of disciplined repetition again. Life punishes this gently at first, then brutally, because time keeps moving even while you wait for a cleaner emotional moment to arrive. Years later, people call it bad luck, burnout, wrong timing. or lost potential, but often it was a long habit of inner permission seeking. Nothing corrodes ambition faster than repeatedly teaching yourself that your mood is more authoritative than your mission, your standards, and your future. That is how talented people become spectators in their own life, full of insight, full of potential, and quietly unable to convert either into form. The world does not only reward talent, it rewards reliability. And reliability is what appears when your feelings stop running human resources. People trust those who show up, markets reward those who persist, bodies respond to those who repeat, and destiny bends toward consistency. So the question is not whether you are gifted enough to build a better life. The question is whether you are governable from within. It's because an ungoverned inner life can sabotage even the brightest mind, the kindest heart, and the clearest plan you ever make again. The turning point begins when you stop asking, "How do I feel about doing this?" and start asking, "Who do I become by obeying this feeling?" That question breaks the spell because it reveals that every mood is not just an emotion, but a proposed identity for you. If you obey boredom, you become someone boredom can command. If you obey fear, you become someone fear can schedule at will. But if you obey principle while your emotions protest, you begin teaching your nervous system that discomfort is a passenger, not a pilot. This is where real self-respect is born, not when you admire yourself in imagination, but when you can rely on yourself in resistance. A hard day is not proof that the plan was wrong. It is often the exact arena where character gets separated from appetite. So stop treating resistance like a verdict, because resistance often appears precisely when the old identity realizes it is losing power inside. The shadow does not leave quietly. It bargains, rationalizes, dramatizes your fatigue, and suddenly makes ordinary discipline feel morally suspicious to you. It will say you are being too hard on yourself, when the truth is that you have been too easy on the patterns destroying you. Mercy toward your future sometimes looks harsh in the present, because it refuses to let today's softness steal tomorrow's dignity from you. So build a rule that survives mood, a small law inside your life that does not reopen its case every morning again. Maybe it is 1 hour of work before scrolling, 1 walk before excuses, or 1 page before sleep, 1 promise kept daily first. The size matters less than the meaning because each repeated act tells your mind that principles outrank preference now in practice daily. Once that message lands deeply, motivation stops being your employer and becomes what it was always supposed to be, a bonus only. And strangely, this is when emotions often become easier because feelings calm down when they realize they no longer control the kingdom. You do not become less human by refusing to obey every mood. You become more adult, more trustworthy, and more available to meaningful creation. The goal is not to kill feeling, but to place feeling in its proper seat, acknowledged, respected, and denied the throne forever. Your future does not need a perfectly inspired version of you. It needs a version who can move while inspiration is absent. That is the person businesses are built by. Bodies are rebuilt by, books are written by, and dignified lives are quietly earned by. When action stops depending on mood, time finally becomes your ally, because repetition can at last accumulate without being constantly interrupted again. And that accumulation looks ordinary at first, almost invisible, until one day your life has a shape your old excuses cannot explain. This is why masters often seem calm, because they are not asking themselves endless emotional questions before they touch the work daily. They already decided who is in charge, and once that decision is made, moods become background noise instead of executive leadership inside. You need that same inner government, not because life is easy, but because life is too important to be run by fluctuation. And the first law of that government is simple. What matters will be done, whether the body applauds, hesitates, or complains today. Not perfectly, not heroically, not always at maximum power, but consistently enough that identity begins to reorganize around follow-through from within now. Because once you experience yourself acting in resistance 10, 20, 50 times, a new self-image starts becoming harder to deny inside you. You stop saying, "I hope I can be disciplined," and start realizing, "I'm becoming someone my moods can no longer intimidate." That realization is quiet but life-changing because it restores the missing crown, the sense that your inner world finally has rightful leadership. And from there, success stops feeling mystical. Not because it is no longer a gift granted to the lucky, but a structure built by repeatable obedience. So the next time your mind whispers that you need a better mood before beginning, hear the sentence for what it often is: a test. A test of whether your future still answers to discomfort, or whether your standards have finally become stronger than your fluctuations inside. Choose the standard, even badly at first, because clumsy obedience to principle will change your life faster than elegant obedience to mood. Do that long enough, and the thing you once called discipline will start feeling like freedom, because you are no longer dragged by yourself. May you protect your inner authority, keep your word on the days that feel barren, and discover how powerful quiet consistency really is. Take care of your mind, guard your energy. And remember that your life begins to change the day your mood loses its vote. And if you want more videos that expose the hidden psychology behind self-betrayal, power, and transformation, stay with this channel and stay strong.